Hey there guys, welcome back to another episode. My name's Harmon. Today's episode is extremely infamous. One of the top ones that I know of in Iowa. This is the Villisca Axe Murder House. This is the house where a brutal axe murder happened that killed 8 people inside the house. I'll get into the whole story in a minute. For now, I just want to show you guys the outside, show you guys the inside, and then go from there. The crime happened in 1912 and it's still unsolved. As far as I know, I think it's the longest running unsolved murders basically in the United States history, at least in the top 5. Anyway guys, we're gonna go inside, check it out. It's just crazy that 100 years have gone by, or actually 108 years have gone by since it all happened. The Villisca Axe Murders took place somewhere between the evening of June 9th to the morning of June 10th, 1912. This was 108 years ago that this crazy crime took place. The people who were killed were the Moore family. The family consisted of the father, Josiah, or Joe Moore. He was 43. His wife, Sarah Moore, was 39, and their 4 children were Herman Montgomery, who was 11, Mary Catherine, who was 10, Arthur Boyd, who was 7, and Paul Vernon, who was 5. The other 2 people who were killed in the house that night were 2 young girls who happened to be spending the night there at the house. They were two young girls who were friends of the children of the Moores, and their names were Ina Mae Stillinger, who was 8, and her sister Lena Gertrude Stillinger, who was 12. So in total, 8 people were killed at the Moore house that night in 1912. Let's get into the history of this case, and of course at the end I will list off the suspects that the police had at the time. On the evening of June 9th, 1912, Mary Catherine, who again was the second oldest Moore child, she was the 10-year-old, she invited her friends, the Stillinger girls, Ina and Lena Stillinger, to come over and to spend the night with them. So on that evening of June 9th, both Stillinger girls and the entire Moore family attended a Presbyterian church service up until about 9:30 p.m. And then they walked back to their house, getting back to their house roughly around 9:45 or 10 p.m. So 7 a.m., June 10th, the next morning, a neighbor of the Moores named Mary Peckham saw that the family hadn't come outside yet to do their morning chores. I guess back then it was very common for families to get up early and go outside, do their chores. So she noticed they hadn't come outside yet at 7 a.m., which I guess was normal for them to be outside doing their chores already. So she went up and knocked on the door. She got no response, so she tried to open the door and noticed it was locked. And back then in 1912, especially in that small little town, no one locked their doors. They had no reason to. It was a very safe, small little community. They had no inkling that anything bad like that would ever happen. So they normally would always leave their doors unlocked. To the neighbor Mary, she found it very, very odd. The neighbor Mary ended up calling Josiah's brother, Ross, who lived in town as well, and called him to come over and find out what was going on. Josiah's brother Ross showed up. He had an extra key. So when Ross went inside, he made his way into the parlor room downstairs, which is kind of like what we would consider like a living room area. He went in there first and then went to the bedroom, which is attached to that. And that is where he discovered Ina and Lena's bodies. So he immediately went outside and contacted the main primary police officer in town, whose name was Hank Horton. So Hank Horton shows up. Of course, at this time, it's just after 7 a.m. on June 10th. Hank Horton shows up, the police officer, and of course discovers the remainder of the Moore family and Stillingers all deceased. All of them were bludgeoned to death by an axe. So the axe, which was the murder weapon, actually belonged to Josiah. It was his axe. I'm guessing they used that axe for all their chores and everything they had to do to, kind of keep up their household. The officer found the axe inside the bedroom where Ina and Lena's bodies were. The doctors concluded that the murders probably took place somewhere between midnight and 5 a.m. on June 10th. 1912. When the police started searching for different clues and evidence, they found 2 used cigarettes in the attic, which is this little room where you have to duck to get inside of. Apparently the killer was sitting up there in that little attic, and since there was 2 used cigarettes on the ground, they kind of surmised that the killer must have waited for all of the family members and the Stillinger girls to fall asleep. In my opinion, I believe that the killer must have slipped into the house while the whole family and the Stillinger girls were at the church service. For one, like I mentioned earlier, all the doors were always unlocked, so anyone could have just slipped right in. He could have gone right up to the attic to hide and to wait till all the family members returned. So the killer began his killing spree in the master bedroom where Josiah and his wife Sarah were sleeping. So he ended up killing Josiah and Sarah. He moved to the bedroom, which is right next door to the master bedroom, and that is where all 4 of the Moore children were sleeping. They were all killed in the same manner with the axe and bludgeoned to death. But what's interesting is the killer went back to the master bedroom and inflicted more blows on Josiah and Sarah. The doctors that did the autopsies and stuff, they discovered that the killer used the blade of the axe on Josiah only. And Josiah also received more blows than anyone else that was killed that night. The rest of the Moore family and the Stillinger girls were all killed with the blunt end of the axe and received less blows. It kind of suggests that whoever the killer was potentially knew Josiah, and it seemed like it was more of a personal thing, considering Josiah received way more blows from the axe, and he received the blows from the blade of the axe. He was the only one who received, hits from the blade of the axe. So that kind of suggests to me that the killer knew Josiah, and that it was like a personal thing, like personal vendetta, something. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on that. After the killer killed Josiah, Sarah, and the 4 more children upstairs, he made his way back downstairs, and that is when he went into the other bedroom where Ina and Lena Stillinger were, and killed both of them. Lena was the only one that they believed to be awake during the event. She had defensive wounds on her arms, and it appeared that she was the only one that fought back. Lena also had her nightgown pushed up above her chest, and she wasn't wearing any underwear, and so they also believe that Lena was sexually assaulted or molested that night as well. That was just such a weird, eerie feeling, going from room to room and just seeing, everything there. Again, like I said, a lot of the stuff you saw was just put in there way after the fact. I'm sure there was some still original stuff that I showed you in there. The actual owner of the house, she's, I don't know, maybe 70, or I don't know. She's kind of been around for a while, but anyway, she told me that the actual axe that was used, they have it now in Des Moines, Iowa, I think, at one of the museums. Just made it to the Villisca Cemetery, where all of the family members are buried, and including the Stillinger girls. In case you're wanting to come here and wanting to know for yourself, there's a little information board before you enter the cemetery, and there's the names, and then they kind of correlate to a number. The Moore family and the Stillingers are all buried on this section called Rose Hill. The Moore family is under 27, and the Stillingers is under 47. Alright, so the entire Moore family is in one kind of gravestone. Got Joseph, or Joe. Sorry about the glare. His wife, Sarah. and of course their kids. I'll list off all the suspects and try to give you kind of a brief description. Some of the suspects were Reverend George Kelly, Frank F. Jones, William Mansfield, Loving Mitchell, Henry Lee Moore, who was not associated to the Moore family, and Andrew Sawyer. Those were the 6 suspects that the police kind of had on their radar. So one of the main top suspects that they had was Reverend George Kelly. And Reverend George Kelly was a traveling minister who happened to be traveling through the town of Villisca on the night of the murders. And he also was preaching at the same church that the Moore family and Stillinger girls attended the evening before they were killed. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but to me, that seems almost too perfect to not be true. So Kelly was described as a kind of a peculiar guy. He also suffered a mental breakdown as an adult, and he was also accused of like a peeping Tom and asking several young girls to pose nude for him. So you can already kind of sense some of these red flags that the police officers were having about this Reverend. And not only that, but he skipped town at 5 or 5:30 in the morning on June 10th. Like right after the murder took place, he skipped town. When the police finally caught up to George Kelly, they brought him to trial, and in the trial, he confessed to the murders. And the reason why it wasn't a slam dunk case was because the jury didn't believe his confession. His known mental illness kind of made police question whether he was actually telling the truth or whether he was just making up the entire thing. And I think that's kind of what the jurors thought when he was on trial, which the trial took place 5 years later in 1917. He was acquitted by the jurors. Next suspect was Andrew Sawyer. Andrew Sawyer was a homeless guy, transient, who kind of bounced around from different places. On the morning of the murders, on June 10th, around 6 in the morning, Andrew Sawyer went up to a railroad company in Creston, Iowa. And he asked them if he could get a job, because he had no job at that time. And Andrew Sawyer was given a job pretty much on the spot. Sawyer told his boss at the railroad company that he was in Villisca that night of the murders. Skipped town because he was just afraid that they would automatically name him as potentially one of the suspects. So of course his boss deemed that to be just weird, and so his boss contacted the police, and so the police ended up talking with Sawyer. However, Sawyer was dismissed as a suspect because he was able to prove that he was in Osceola, Iowa, the night of the murders, and so they deemed his alibi to be accurate and that he was in a different city the night of the murders. Which again is interesting because he claimed to his boss that he was in Villisca that night. Frank F. Jones, another suspect, he was a Villisca resident and he was also an Iowa state senator. Josiah Moore had actually worked for Frank Jones before leaving to open up his own store. Josiah apparently took business away from Frank Jones, including a very successful John Deere dealership. Josiah was rumored to have an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law. However, there's no evidence that supported that, and Frank Jones was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Another potential suspect was William Mansfield. Some people think that William Mansfield was potentially hired by Frank Jones, the senator, to murder the Moore family because of what I mentioned earlier. William Mansfield was believed to be a serial killer. Mansfield was also believed to have killed his wife, his infant child, and his parents-in-law with an axe 2 years before the Villisca Axe Murders took place. He also was a suspect in a different axe murder case in Piola, Kansas, 4 days before the Villisca Axe Murders took place. And he was also another suspect in a double homicide of Jenny Peterson and Jenny Miller in Illinois. Each of those crime scenes was accessible by train, and all the murders were carried out basically in the same manner, with an axe, bludgeoning them all to death. And so Mansfield was on pretty much every suspect list possible for all these different axe murder cases. And so he again was kind of another one of their suspects. However, Mansfield was released after a special grand jury determined that his alibi checked out. Some payroll records provided an alibi for Mansfield, and the payroll records showed that Mansfield was in Illinois the night of the Villisca murders. Henry Lee Moore, again not related to the Moore family whatsoever, is another suspect, and he was also another serial killer. He was convicted of the murders of his mother and grandmother several months after the murders in Villisca, and guess what? His weapon of choice was an axe. Again, very striking similarities between the murders of his mother and grandmother to the Moore family and Stillinger girl murders. It doesn't say much more than that. It doesn't say he was convicted of the crimes of the Villisca Axe Murders. Another suspect was a guy named Sam Moyer, and Sam Moyer was Josiah's brother-in-law. He often threatened to kill Josiah on numerous occasions. However, Moyer's alibi checked out and cleared him of any involvement in the case. Last suspect that they had on their list was a guy named Paul Mueller. And Paul Mueller was a German immigrant who also was a suspect in the 1897 murder of a family in Massachusetts who had employed him as a farmhand. Mueller was also a suspect in numerous other murders across the country, deeming him to also be a potential other serial killer. His weapon of choice was an axe. And to top it off, Mueller was also known to sexually molest any of the young girls that were there at any of his crime scenes. I don't know, guys. It's so hard to say. All those suspects sounded like they could have been potentially involved. Some of them had alibis that cleared them. But at the end of the day, 108 years later, no actual suspect was ever convicted of the axe murders of the Moore family and the Stillinger girls. Let me know, guys, what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new around here, my name's Harmon. Going around the country, showing you guys different crimes, infamous people, infamous events. So if you like that kind of stuff, definitely hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell icon next to it. Every Monday and Friday I upload a new video, so make sure you stick around. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was one I really wanted to go to and film. It was just one I feel like I had to do. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon. Until next time, have a good one.